today we want to talk about hope. And hope is such a difficult thing to describe. It's such a complicated thing to bring about. And today I thought of perhaps describing it or trying to define it in a different way. And turn with me to Isaiah chapter 40. And I want to read from verse 28 to 31. Isaiah chapter 40. And it reads, "Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the heaven and earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even though youth grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint." Warren Wesley, in one of his commentaries, in commenting about the book of Isaiah, and in particular this passage that we've just read, he remembers one statement that was said to him with a radio presenter who said to him, "Look at others and you'll be distressed. Look at yourself and you'll be depressed. Look at God and you'll be blessed." And that was such a profound statement. And for me, it was one of the things that jumped out there to say, when we look at others, we might end up being distressed because what we see in them might not be what we want, or what they have might not be what we have, or where they find themselves that might not be where we find ourselves, and we end up distressed. And if you make the mistake of looking at ourselves, we're then depressed, because when we look at ourselves, as we head there, we fail to convince us. Though we hear him speak to us, we hear that whisper that tells he is not there, and we end up depressed. But when we choose to look at God, or when we choose to look to God, we will be more than blessed. And one other person then went further on to say, when the outlook is bleak, we need to try the uplook. When all that surrounds us is bleak, we need to dig deep and perhaps look at something. When we look at this passage, it surprised me when I invested time again in reliving and just reading this scripture. The first 39 chapters of Isaiah were not interesting stories. They were all dark and gloomy. And in chapter 40, this is when you read that famous story, that famous passage, which is quoted when John comes to say, "Prepare ye the way for the Lord." And it was now a message that's bringing hope to a people that has been battered and bruised, a people that had lost trust. And part of this conversation that we hear in chapter 40, the children of Israel acknowledged the presence of God. But in acknowledging the presence of God, they then convinced themselves that this God was a God of our forefathers, and he has abandoned us. The manner in which this God is treating us, we don't feel he's God for us. We don't feel he's the God for now. He's the God for the past. And they compared God with idols. Again, if you read this particular passage, if you pick it up from verse 25, God actually asks and says, "To whom will you compare me with?" And the children of Israel had compared God with other gods. And the gods of this time, the ancient world, they believed that these gods had one of the characteristics of being weak. And in being weak, they failed to hear or acknowledge what their people were going through. And this is what exactly the Israelites were now doing. Instead of the nation, praising God, they complained that God you are so distant. If you hear someone say to you, Zimbabwe is going to be a great nation, you're like, oh, okay, I hear you. Okay, that's all right. Maybe not in my time. I've always been happy with someone whom I said, when he says, is there a future for Zimbabwe? And I said, yes, there's a future. But he says, not in my time. Not in my, when we look at what surrounds us, it's so easy to join in the complaint because the God seems so distant. Even when we go through challenges in life, God feels so distant. And when you're so, have you ever been desperate for God to say something? And He doesn't. And every piece of paper you pick is confirming how absent He is. I often, even if you go through bad times, when you try and tune in on the radio, it seems the DJ is knowing what you're going through. Song after song after song after. You're like, oh man, where can I turn to? And this is exactly what these guys had done for themselves. But I've got a question that I really would love to ask. Instead of these guys seeing the door that God was opening for them when He says, comfort, I'm going to comfort you, my people. Instead of seeing that window of opportunity, instead of seeing that door open, they looked at the journey that lay before them and they said, no, we don't have strength. And they made the mistake of comparing this God. So as I try and talk about hope, who is this God? Who is this God that these guys are complaining about? And maybe, before I describe this God, before I attempt to describe this God, never think that you have been forgotten. Never think that your story is forgotten. Unlike the pagan idols, God is eternal and the creator. And He comes in power. And you see the beauty about this story that we've just read. It is this God who is powerful. It is this God who has the strength and not His people. It is this God who's more powerful than all these idols. It is this God who is the creator. If you read this, He is the one who holds His creation together. He is all powerful. And as He is all powerful, He is a God who never grows tired. But the other gods will grow tired. Do we get tired? Yes. Do we get weary? Yes. Do we get frustrated? Yes. We don't have the strength. And yet this God whom we are trying to describe, this God whom we are encouraging each other to put our hope and our trust in, is a God who's all powerful. And when He comes and gives strength to the weary. He comes and gives power to the powerless. He comes and gives hope to the hopeless. He comes and brings life to death. He comes and breathes His Spirit to the lifeless. This is the God who's coming. And when we look at this God, He is a sovereign God. You know, when we talk of the sovereignty of God, you can't even question Him or compare Him with anything. That's why it says in verse 25, to whom will you compare me? Or who is my equal? He asks, who is my equal? Who can come close to this God? So who is this God? This is an all-powerful God. A God who's in control of everything. So He is the God who's coming in. And when He comes in, He then says, I will give strength. Who is this that gives strength? Or perhaps, what is this hope that we want to talk about? Who is this God? Who can be strengthened by this God? Now, when we talk of the strength, He says, all those who wait. Now, the word, as I said, the word hope. You can replace the word and say hope. You can put the word wait. Or you can remove the word wait and say trust. So all those that hope in this God, or all those that trust this God, or all those that just wait upon this God. Now, trust, I'm trying to avoid someone. Let me look this way. Trust is, there it is. You know what I mean? Trust is a very complicated, it's a very difficult thing to do. When we say trust, we are saying you're letting it go. You have no longer teachers. You have teachers here. I say teachers. I can see them. Those that are taught or lectured or what? Do you know they also write exams? They teach 3-4 years. And when the final exam is coming, all they better do is trust that the information that they give to these kids will see them through. They are hopeless. They are helpless. They just watch there and stroll up and down, up and down, up and down. And with the hope and the trust that the information that we've given, the knowledge that we've given, we trust that all it will. And one of the worst things for parents to do is, parents don't trust kids that they are grown up. There's that aspect that I still want to hold on to my child. I still want to be this. They still see this child. They still see this boy. I often listen to this conversation when someone is called Nana here, talking to this one old guy, and he's tall, and the Nana says to him, "Hello, my boy," and I'm saying, so you call a boy. People, we are still kids. Even when parents have grandchildren, when they see us, you are still my child. There's still that aspect that say, I can't let you go. But you've got to trust that my kids have grown up. They now have their own way of life. And you know what, kids? They will surprise you when they make choices that you are not so pleased with. Trust that they will make the right choice. So who can be strengthened? It is the poor. It is the weak. It is the hopeless that come to this God. God knows how you feel. God knows what you feel. And He has ultimate power to see you. We cannot obey God in our strength. All we can do is trust and believe that He will give us His what? His strength. If we trust ourselves, we will faint. If we trust in ourselves, we will fall. But when we wait upon this God, when we endure, when we stand firm, we will receive strength from Him. It is Him who gives us this strength. And when He has given us this strength, guess what we do? We exchange our weakness for His strength. He gives us, I love this God. You see, I love Him too much that I say to them, how many of us are terrified to come and stand where I'm standing here? I'm seeing hands. But if you stand at the back there, you know everyone who's here, right? You interact. When we walk out there, I haven't seen anyone running away from anyone. But if somebody is asked to come here, people will start to sweat. People they can't find somebody. People are shaking and people are, why are they afraid? They say, I don't have the strength. I have the fear. And I'm saying, don't worry. The one who's inviting you gives you that strength. Week in, week out, with people here for years, they've been served here. But they've never set foot here. Do you know that? We have people that are seated here, staring at me right now, that have never, during the course of the service, put a step here. There's that. Perhaps is the way we set up our benches, and there's such a huge distance. From where the camera is to here, seems like ages. It feels like forever to walk there. And people start to say, what are people thinking about me? Am I dressed properly? Am I looking that good? Am I all that? Am I all that? If you trust or look in yourself. Remember my opening line? If you look to yourself, you'll be depressed. Who remembers what shirt I was putting on last week? Do you remember? Or the shirt I was putting on the week before? Or on the shoes that I have? In fact, who cares what I wear? Yeah. Who checks? There's one person, of course, my wife will say, hey. But none of you remembers anything. Okay? But here we are. We convince ourselves people are watching. I know of people that say, I can't even come to church because I don't have enough clothes. I know of people that say, what will people eat? Guess what? We're not even concerned about that. We're not even worried about that. Because we come here and exchange our weakness for his what? For his strength. We come here and exchange our fear for his goodness. We come here and exchange our brokenness for that love that abounds in what? In him. It is in his strength that we stand here. Though I can't see what's before me, all I can do is trust. Trust that he will see what? He will see me through. I trust that he will see me. So we exchange it. And then, what is this hope that I'm talking about? What is hope? When we say to hope, we are saying to look to God for all that you need. And the key word there is this tiny little word, all. You know how we say, I'm giving you the space to do? And when you start operating, I'm saying, not there. No, I forgot, you can't go there. You draw like, you know, when we go to God, we come to God, there are things that we think God can sort and the things that I think I can take care of, right? Is anyone like me? That sometimes I think, this is too little for God. Let me just fix it, right? And I can brief him later. You know? The things that I say, let me take care of it. And we can explain further. And then the more that's not giving all to God. Even when we sing that song to say, I surrender, or when we hope to God, we are saying, we are giving God and trusting God for all that we need. And as we trust him for all that we need, we are meditating on his character. Not only are we meditating on his character, we are holding on to the promises that he has made to us. The promise that says, I will never leave you, you know what? No, forsake you. And we are holding, not only are we holding on to this promise, we are praying and seeking to glorify him. There's nothing about me. It's all about him. I don't know how to put this across in English. I hope Anthony will help me. I'm going to say it in short and you are the English. Tell me. You know, there's one phrase that my brother, often if I'm telling him, I'm going through this challenge and all that, knowledge is a way that he says stuff. He says, in Shona it says, change I see my love. That's it? Yes, the change is not your mother's. Thank you. Praise God for the English. He says, every time I'm saying, he says, my boy, church, I say, it says, the church is not your mother's. In other words, he's saying, stop stressing. There's someone bigger and greater who takes care of that thing. It's God's. That's why that song we sing again says, it reminds me that you are still what? You're still God. Not only are you still God, you still reign. He's God, and He still what? Reigns. And we need to give Him when we say we trust God, when we say we hope in God, we are saying we are waiting upon you to lead the way. We are trusting you in every single step of the what? Of the way. You lead. And when we trust God, guess what happens? When we put our hope in God, when we believe Him, when we look and wait for Him, there is one thing that He then says. He says, He will renew your strength. Meaning to say, my friends, we are all weak. we are all powerless. We are not all-knowing. And we are banking and trusting in an all-powerful God. It is God who gives us this strength. So it says, you renew your strength. And the picture there is, I couldn't find an old jacket at all. It was an afternoon. It is taking off that old thing, okay? And then putting on something what? New. God is inviting those that are broken, those that are powerless, those that are frustrated. Anyone who's nowhere near perfection is the one that is being invited. He says, come, you give me your imperfection, you give me your worthlessness, and I'll give you my strength. And I'll give you my power. It is in his power and in his knowledge that we hold on. This is why we hold in God. We wait and hold on in him. Why? He is the one who gives us strength. And in closing, my friends, get your eyes off yourself and begin to look to God in faith. Don't focus on yourself. Focus on what? On God. And this God is greater than our circumstances. He's greater than the circumstances that are behind us, within us, and before us. He's all greater. And he is even greater and more powerful than our fears. He says, even though the youth will grow weary, if they run in their strength, they grow weary. Even though young men stumble and fall, but those who wait, it is those who wait in his strength. As we hope in God, he enables us to soar in moments of crisis. And as we hope in God, he enables us to run when challenges of life come. As we hope in God, he enables us to walk this faith day by day. And above all, he helps us to overcome our fear. And I want to end by sharing this story. A story is told of a mother who constantly said to a little girl, my girl, the moon and the stars is God's light. So one day, while the little girl wanted to go to sleep, the mother blew off the candle. And this child was so terrified. But she looked through the window and saw the moon's light. And then she says to the mother, Mom, is that God's light? And the mother says, yeah, and says, does God also go to sleep? And the mother says, no, God is always awake. And the little girl then said to the mother, while God is still awake, I will not be afraid. While this God is still awake, I will hope in him. While this God is still awake, we can wait upon him. I forgot to ask the praise and worship to sing this. Hold me close, let your love surround me, bring me in, draw me to your side. And as I wait, I'll rise up like the eagle, and I will soar with you. Your spirit leads me on, and the power of your love, he gives us his strength, and we will soar like him. We will be in his likeness when we hope in him. Let us pray.